My voice drops to a low murmur, like a whispered secret, echoing in the quiet space where only the hum of the computer and the gentle rustle of night wind against the window can be heard. Have you ever wondered if the person you love the most, the one you trust implicitly, is harboring a hidden part of their life, a part that even your wildest thoughts couldn't conjure? I pause, letting the question hang in the air, planting a seed of curiosity, a vague unease, in the listener's mind. Because for Sarah, that question was no longer a hypothetical. It had become an obsession, a reality that chilled her to the bone. Sarah, a talented architect with lustrous brown hair and intelligent, sparkling blue eyes, had found the love of her life in David. He was a computer scientist, with a warm smile and remarkable composure. They had a life many dreamed of, a charming, cozy old house in the suburbs, a garden overflowing with blooming roses, and a love that seemed endless. Everything was perfect, or at least Sarah thought so. Until one day, a seemingly innocuous, small event ripped through that perfect facade, exposing a deep fissure she never knew existed. It was a Saturday afternoon, pouring rain. Sarah was home alone. David was away on a business trip. She decided to tidy up the attic, a space filled with old mementos and items they hadn't truly touched since moving in 3 years prior. In the process, a stack of old boxes piled in the furthest corner tumbled down, revealing a small gap in the wall behind them. Initially, Sarah thought it was just an architectural flaw, a minor crack in the plaster. But when she reached out to touch it, a chilling draft wafted out, and the sensation wasn't like a normal wall. It felt like a door, or rather a hidden passageway. Sarah's heart quickened slightly, an inexplicable curiosity creeping in. She shone her phone's flashlight into the opening. The weak light was just enough to reveal a dark, damp space, and a peculiar scent wafted to her nose. A smell not of dust or mildew, but of antiquity, of something long concealed. This mystery, though just beginning, stirred something deep within her, a sense of unease she had never experienced. David had never mentioned this room. They had bought the house from an elderly family and believed they knew every nook and cranny of it. Yet there was a place they had never set foot in. Sarah was a strong, rational woman, but curiosity sometimes overpowered caution. She returned to the storage room, found a small crowbar, and began to pry at the gap. The old wooden planks groaned and creaked as she applied force. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from exertion, but from an invisible tension. Finally, a large wooden board sprang open, revealing a space larger than she had anticipated. It was a small, cramped room, tucked away under the house's main staircase. As she stepped inside, the antiquated scent became more pronounced, mingling with a faint hint of cigarette smoke and something metallic. Sarah turned her flashlight to its brightest setting, sweeping it around the room. Thick layers of dust covered everything, like a veil of time. There was a small, dark wooden table, on which sat an old typewriter, an ashtray filled with discolored cigarette butts, and a worn leather-bound journal. Beside it was a small metal cabinet, securely locked with a rusty padlock. On the opposite wall hung an old-world map, with scribbled lines and small pins stuck into various locations. The entire scene sent shivers down Sarah's spine. It was so different from their current living space, so alien to the image of David she knew. Her husband was neat, modern, and had no interest in old relics or adventurous travels. The initial sense of unease had now transformed into clear suspicion, a monumental question forming in her mind. Why would David hide this room from her? And what had transpired here? She gently picked up the leather-bound journal. The cover was worn, but the pages inside were intact. She opened it, and sharp, familiar handwriting immediately caught her eye. It was David's handwriting. Her heart clenched. The feeling was both a slight relief that it wasn't a stranger's, and a heavy dread that the man she loved was concealing something so terrible. She read the first few lines, and they were like an electric shock. It wasn't a diary, but meticulous notes about activities, meetings, and unfamiliar names. Each line was carefully written, as if its owner was trying to keep secrets absolutely hidden. The rain outside seemed to intensify, drumming against the roof, creating a somber soundtrack to Sarah's discovery. She no longer felt cold, only a numbness spreading through her body. What did that locked metal cabinet hold? And what journeys did that world map with its pins represent? She stared at David's handwriting, word by word, as if trying to decipher an ancient code. Every small detail in this room, from the old typewriter, the ashtray full of cigarette butts, to the musty smell of buried secrets, was slowly painting a dark picture of the past of the man she had sworn to spend her life with. When David returned, she would have to confront him. But what would she ask him? Where would she even begin? The peace in their home had shattered, not by an argument, but by a hidden truth, a secret that had slumbered under the stairs, waiting for the right moment to explode. Sarah felt like she was standing on the edge of an abyss. On one side was the happy life she had known. On the other was the darkness of a strange past, David's past. And she knew, whether she wanted to or not, she had already touched it. The secret room under the stairs had become a gaping wound in Sarah's mind. Every time she walked past the hallway, she felt a chill emanate from behind the seemingly innocuous wall. David returned, still with that warm smile, still with his usual tight hugs. But Sarah no longer looked at him with the clear eyes she once did. In her gaze, there was now a hint of doubt, a vague fear. She tried to maintain her composure, but the tension was like an invisible string pulling taut every cell in her body. She had considered many ways to confront David. Should she ask him directly, or should she investigate covertly? Her instinct as an architect, always seeking logic and transparency, urged her to uncover everything. But her heart, which loved David deeply, feared what she might discover. Ultimately, she chose to wait. She would observe him, searching for signs, for unusual behaviors. The following days passed in tense silence. David seemed oblivious to her discovery. He still went to work, still tended the garden, still told her about his day. But Sarah began to notice small things she had overlooked before. Sometimes, he would look towards the staircase with a distant gaze, as if lost in thought. Some nights, she would wake up to find him sitting contemplatively in the living room, his eyes fixed on nothing in particular. When she asked, he simply said he was thinking about a complex project. But Sarah knew that wasn't the whole truth. One evening, while David was showering, Sarah secretly returned to the hidden room. She decided she had to find out more. The locked metal cabinet remained a major mystery. She tried every key in the house, from the spare back door key to the bookshelf key, but none fit. Helplessness welled up, but it also spurred her on. She thought about the detective movies she had seen, about complex lockpicking techniques. Then an idea sparked in her mind. David had a small repair kit which included a multi-tool pliers. She went back, and with a bit of dexterity, she began to pry at the rusty padlock. The metal screeched in the silence of the house, making her jump, fearing David would hear. But there was no sound from the bathroom. She continued. After a few minutes, the padlock sprung open with a dry click. When the metal cabinet door opened, Sarah almost held her breath. Inside weren't stacks of money or weapons, but a thick bundle of documents, an old camera, and a long-range radio. She trembled as she took out the documents. They were stamped "Top Secret" and contained classified information about international organizations, political conspiracies, and covert operations. Every page was proof that David was not merely a computer scientist. He was a spy, or at least had been a spy. The names in the documents began to link to the locations marked on the world map. The small pins weren't tourist destinations, but locations of campaigns, of missions. Sarah felt her head spinning. Her life, her marriage, everything was a lie. David, the man she had trusted with her whole heart, had concealed such a dark and dangerous past. When David emerged from the bathroom, he found Sarah standing in the living room, holding the documents from the secret room. His eyes changed, from their usual composure to a look of astonishment mixed with fear, and then to a chilling coldness. The air in the room thickened. "Sarah!" His voice was faint, but Sarah felt as if a knife had just pierced her heart. "David, what is this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What is that room? And who are you?" He remained silent, his gaze sweeping over the documents in her hand, then settling on her face. Despair flickered in his eyes, then vanished quickly, replaced by a cold determination. I can explain. Explain what? Sarah cut him off, tears beginning to well up. Explain why you've been hiding from me all these years? Explain why our marriage was built on a lie. David stepped closer, but Sarah recoiled. The invisible barrier between them had now become an insurmountable wall. He tried to touch her hand, but she flinched away, as if touching something dangerous. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't want you to know this. Didn't want me to know? She gave a bitter laugh. So how long were you planning to hide it from me? When were you going to tell me that the man I married was someone entirely different? Someone living in shadows and secrets? He sighed, a heavy sigh laden with both exhaustion and regret. You found the room, didn't you? Yes, Sarah said, her voice firmer now. And I found these. She held up the documents. You're a spy, aren't you? Or an assassin? Or something else, David? David slumped onto the sofa, covering his face with his hands. He looked tired, much older than his actual age. I tried to escape that past, Sarah. I tried to build a normal life with you. Then why didn't you tell me? Sarah asked, feeling her heart constrict. Why is there that room? Why are there these documents? Why didn't you trust me? He looked up, his eyes filled with anguish. I was afraid. I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you would leave me. I was afraid that my past would destroy everything we had built. And now what? Sarah said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Now that past has destroyed everything, David. The story of the secret room and David's terrible secrets began to unfold. Sarah faced a difficult choice: confront the harsh truth or retreat into denial. But she knew her life would never be the same. Trust had shattered, and David's secrets had dragged her into a world she never thought she would belong to. Their relationship, once seemingly solid, was now a fragile thread, capable of breaking at any moment. Night fell, bringing with it the chilling reality of a bare truth. The conversation between Sarah and David took place in the suffocating atmosphere of shattered trust. David's words, though full of remorse and pain, could not soothe the hurt and betrayal Sarah felt. She sat opposite him, staring into his eyes, trying to find a glimmer of light, some truth to cling to. But all she saw was terrifying complexity and contradiction. David began to speak, his voice thick, as if shedding a burden that had weighed him down for years. He wasn't a spy, but a former high-ranking intelligence analyst. His job wasn't just data analysis, but also planning secret operations, sometimes involving extremely high risks. The room under the stairs, that was where he had once worked, his personal safe house, when he was still in the business. After his discharge, he had tried to bury it all, sealing it off as a part of a dark past he didn't want to remember. I didn't want you to know about what I did, Sarah, David said, his voice almost pleading. It's a cruel world, full of lies and violence. I just wanted a peaceful life with you. But Sarah couldn't accept that explanation. Peaceful? She laughed bitterly. You think hiding such a terrible part of your past is peaceful? You lived with me under a disguise, David. You built a fake life, and I was part of it. Just as the argument seemed endless, a strange phone rang. It was the long-range radio in the secret room. David startled. He rushed into the room and Sarah followed. A crackling voice emanated from the radio, speaking an unfamiliar language, but Sarah could hear David's name in it, repeated urgently. David's face turned ashen. He picked up the radio, his eyes reflecting a fear Sarah had never seen before. They found me, he murmured, his voice as if talking to himself. They found me. Sarah didn't understand. Who? Who found you? David turned to look at her, his eyes filled with despair. An organization I tried to bring down. They thought I died in an explosion years ago, but apparently not. He began to explain frantically, every word like a confession. He had been part of a covert operation to expose an international criminal network involved in arms dealing and classified information. He had succeeded in gathering evidence, But during the final pursuit, an incident occurred, resulting in the elimination of his entire team. He was the sole survivor, and he decided to fake his death to escape that network, to build a new, normal life. He had thought he was safe. But now, the voice on the radio and the information in the documents Sarah had found all indicated that the network was still active and they had found him. They knew he was alive. The front door suddenly burst open. Two dark figures rushed in, dressed in black, masked, and armed with guns. Chaos erupted. David pushed Sarah behind him, drawing a handgun he had kept well hidden in the secret room. He wasn't just an analyst. He was a former operative trained for combat. Gunshots echoed loudly, tearing through the silence of the house. Sarah screamed, her entire body trembling. She watched David fight, with an astonishing speed and determination. He wasn't the calm, gentle man she knew. He was a warrior, a man living in danger. One of the intruders fell. The other returned fire, the bullet grazing David's shoulder. Blood welled up, staining his shirt. Sarah rushed to him, trying to support him, but David pushed her away. "Run, Sarah, run!" He collapsed, his breathing ragged. The remaining intruder advanced, pointing the gun at David's head. Sarah felt an intense fear, a despair overwhelming her. She couldn't let him die. She couldn't. In a moment of desperation, Sarah saw the world map on the wall. The small pins, the scribbled lines. A crazy idea sparked in her mind. She remembered David's words about a contingency plan for the most extreme emergency, something he had prepared before they even met. She had always thought they were just jokes. She rushed to the map, pulling out a pin from a distant location, a tiny island in the Pacific. Underneath that pin, there was a small line of text written in invisible ink, only visible under ultraviolet light. Sarah didn't have a UV light, but she had a lighter. She lightly held the flame under the text, and a series of numbers appeared, along with an account name and password. It was the GPS coordinates of a safe haven and a secret bank account. The intruder had noticed her actions. He aimed his gun at Sarah. "What are you doing?" David, despite being wounded, tried to stand up, creating a diversion. Sarah seized the opportunity, quickly memorizing the numbers and information. Just then, police sirens wailed in the distance. The intruder panicked, knowing he was out of time. He fired one last shot towards David, then quickly escaped through the window. Sarah rushed to David's side. He had lost a lot of blood. "Sarah, you found it," he whispered, his eyes filled with a mix of satisfaction and agony. "I found it, David. I found it," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "I'll take you away. We'll be okay." But he shook his head. "No, it's too late. You go. Live a normal life. Don't let them find you." David's voice faded. He squeezed Sarah's hand, then released it. His breath stopped. David was gone, right in the arms of the woman he loved most, right after his most shocking secrets were revealed. The conflict had reached its climax, and the price paid was too high. Sarah held David, her cries tearing through the night. She had lost him, but she had also discovered the full truth about him, a painful truth, yet also a tragic one. The police sirens grew closer, tearing through the silence of the house where David had taken his last breath. Sarah no longer cried, only a cold emptiness enveloped her. She had lost David, her beloved husband, but at the same time, she had lost the illusion of a normal life. His death was not just a personal tragedy but also an end to the deceit, to the secrets that had been buried for too long. When the police burst in, Sarah just sat there, beside David's body, her eyes vacant. She recounted everything about the secret room, about the documents, about the sudden attack. Initially, they were suspicious of her, but upon examining the room under the stairs and the evidence David had left behind, they began to believe her extraordinary story. The involvement of an international criminal organization in a family murder case was unexpected, but David's evidence was too clear. In the following days, Sarah lived like a shadow. David's funeral was quiet, attended only by a few of Sarah's relatives and friends. None of them knew about David's second life, about what he had done, about the dangers he had faced. Sarah kept it all secret. She knew that's what David would have wanted. She had memorized the series of numbers and information from the map. A small island in the Pacific, a secret bank account with a significant sum of money. That was what David had left for her. An escape route, a chance to start over. But could she? Could she leave everything behind to go to a strange place, to live an entirely new life? Time passed, and the pain gradually subsided, but the scars remained. Sarah returned to work, trying to find peace in her designs, her blueprints. But every time she saw the staircase, or heard a strange noise, the image of the secret room, the gunshots, and David's desperate eyes would flood back. One afternoon, Sarah sat in the garden, where the roses David had tended still bloomed. She held the lighter she had used to uncover his final secret. She suddenly realized that even though David was gone, he had left her not just secrets, but also a lesson in resilience, in facing danger, and in deep love no matter how concealed. She had once thought that her life would be destroyed by this truth. But then, she realized that David himself had given her a new opportunity. He had spent his life fighting evil, protecting what was right. And now it was up to her to continue. Sarah decided to leave the house, selling everything that reminded her of the past, except for a few small mementos of David. She used the money from his secret account to start a new life. She didn't go to that distant island, but to another large city, where she knew no one. She wanted to rebuild her life herself, not relying on David's hidden life, but on her own strength. She founded a small design company, specializing in safe houses, secret shelters. Perhaps it was a way for her to confront the past, or perhaps it was a way for her to continue David's legacy, in her own way. She never told anyone the true story of David, of the secret room, or of those who had come for him. It was her own secret, and it would forever remain deep within her heart. Sarah's life never returned to normal. She always lived with a certain vigilance, but not out of fear, but because she had a clearer understanding of the complex nature of this world. She had found a hidden strength within herself, a strength she had never known before. The story of the secret room under the stairs is not just a story about a man's secrets, but also a woman's journey in confronting the truth, accepting pain, and finding the strength to rise after loss. It is a reminder that sometimes, the biggest secrets lie hidden in the most unexpected places, and they can change our lives forever. And sometimes, a tragic ending is the beginning of a new chapter, a stronger, more meaningful life. Sarah's life was no longer perfect, but it was more authentic, and perhaps, in some way, she had found true peace,